Thank you all so much.
Can we do the
Yes, yes. So you're used to probably, I don't know which way you do it, but visualize in the space in front of you if you would. An image of the Buddha floating there in space holographically. Oh, yeah. So with the first recitation of the refuge prayer, visualize that from that image in the space before you, that white light emanates from the Buddha's forehead and gently comes through space to touch your own forehead. Visualize that this then purifies your whole being, your whole physical being. It's made light. Then with the second recitation song, visualize that red light comes from the image floating in front of you. Red light softly floats from the Buddha's throat center into your throat center, purifying speech. Oh, yeah. Then with the third recitation, visualize that blue light comes, emanates from the Buddha's heart center, floats gently through space until it touches your heart center and is purified. Your mind. With these recitations, then we purify body, speech, and mind by taking refuge in the Blessed Buddha who taught us these teachings on how to purify. Oh, so song, oh, how are you doing? No, so I'm gonna do it slower. That's all right. We can do it faster. Song, Chudan, Jonam, Chanjo, Guado, Sushi, Davi, Jinso, Kipe, Sonam, Ki, Rola, Pinshi, Sonye, Sonye, Chudan, Soji, Jonam, Chanjo, Guado, Davi, Sushi, Davi, Jinso, Kipe, Sonam, Ki, Rola, Pinshi, Sonye, Parsho, Gula, Sonye, Chudan, Soji, Jonam, Chancho Guardo Dani Kapsu Chio Dagi Jinso Kipe Sonaki Yola Penshi Sonye Rupara. Oh, yes. I am so happy to see you. Really. Really. Thank you for being here. On a rainy night. You came out. Thank you. Those of you online, thank you so much for joining us. Oh, yeah. So I want to be okay, it's all right. I want to begin with a story. It's legendary. I think Kumar Swami may have, in the 50s dug this tale up from somewhere, but I like it. It's the story of the Buddha after he attained enlightenment. The Buddha is walking along the road, and a man joins him as he's walking along. I look and now I think, oh, first I should thank you. Lars, thank you so much for the invitation to come here. Therese, thank you so much for meeting me at the airport with Miriam and
Francesca.
Francesca. I know you so much. Sorry. Thank you for the invitation. Thank all of you for being here.
Thank you.
That's what I wanted to start. I've been so welcome since getting here yesterday. Just, treated to a really warm welcome. So I want to say that first. Now to the story. The Buddha's walking along the road, and this man joins him, and he sees his striking countenance. I mean, the Buddha must have been really light once he put that eye down. Me, having experienced ahankara, and I see you. The eye maker was gone. So the Buddha must have felt really light. Well, that's from inside. How did he look outside? This man saw him. And he said, kind sir, tell me, are you some kind of God? The Buddha says, no. And he says, well then, are you some sort of magician? And the Buddha says, no. And he says, well, I don't think this is the case, but could you be a man? And the Buddha says, no. So the man says, well, please tell me, what are you? I'm awake. Buddha said, I'm awake. So the Buddha had woken up. Oh, what was that dream like? We should be able to answer. The Buddha had woken up. He was no longer dreaming. Just keep the story. Tonight I'm going to talk about Prajnaparamita, the perfection of wisdom, both as a group of texts and an interesting group of texts for delineating Theravada from, if you will, Mahayana. The Buddha taught in the 6th century. Best dates, well, depending on which Indologist you go by, the Buddha lived between 563 and 483 BCE. So I've just come from teaching in Amsterdam where I talked about what was the society of the time like. But we don't have time for that tonight. Just want to say the Buddha taught in the 6th century BC, India, but these texts that we call Prajnaparamita texts, we know, or our best guess is that they were written between 100 BCE and something like 600, maybe even later, CE, right? The Christian era. So they were late. They were written late. But from the time when the Buddha was teaching and the canon was, well, there was no canon, nothing was written down, but the Buddha's teachings were passed orally. So can you imagine those people who were known as dadas, who were known as reciters, who could keep things that they'd heard and pass it on? So Ananda is such a person. When you hear Ewa Maya Shrutam Ekasmin Samaye, thus was heard by me on a certain occasion, that's Ananda speaking. And he's going to tell us the sutra. Or Upali is going to tell us the narrative out of which certain rules came. That's Upali speaking. And then there's the Abhidharma. Okay, so there's a canon. So the Buddha taught nothing was committed to writing, and yet his teachings were being orally transmitted and passed down and practiced by people in different parts of India. They didn't all live in the same space. So around 100 BCE, now 500 years have passed, right? There come to be these texts that are sort of, they appear to be of a piece, and they appear to all focus on, and so to create a genre to themselves that later we refer to as Prajnaparamita texts. There are 38 such texts, and they are distinguished by their lengths. Konza, who's an expert at this, he spent most of his life devoted to translating and researching Prajnaparamita text. Konza says, Edward Konza, he says there were 38 texts that we can call Prajnaparamita texts. And there's the Prajnaparamita in 125,000 shloka. Prajnaparamita in 100,000 shloka. Konza argues that then the shorter ones like 10,000, 25,000, 8,000, he argues, is one of the earliest, come along. And then ultimately, these short texts, which summarize the big ones, which are the famous ones we Westerners generally know about, the Diamond and the Heart Sutra, the Diamond Cutter Sutra and the Heart Sutra, and Hui Nen, the Sutra of Hui Nen. Hui Nen wrote a commentary on the Diamond Sutra, so we're still talking about those two. Those are the most famous Prajnaparamita texts, and we're going to talk about what the messages of all of them are. And those two in particular, or those three taken together, form really a heart, the heart of Zen practice, right? Heart Sutra, Diamond Sutra, Sutra of Hui, Diamond Sutra, Heart Sutra. Tika, how come? Well, before the advent of these texts, which become called Prajnaparamita texts, Buddhists had been practicing, but they had not really been communicating or committing to writing what it is that they were focusing on. Buddha taught a lot of different things, right? 84,000, if we take that, the path, sort of, not literally, but he taught lots of different methods. Okay. What difference do these texts make? These texts, Prajnaparamita texts, actually mark the beginning of what we call the Maya. Let me take one step back and say, as Gelug Lamas usually say, quoting Atisha, they say, there are three scopes of being, three aims. Have you heard this as three scopes of being? Okay, so beings have sort of three spiritual, aims. Some people see the practice of spirituality as being aimed at higher rebirth. For these Gelugpa's teachers, and for Atisha, because Atisha planned this whole threefold thing, Atisha, right? Atisha said, some people, their aim is just higher rebirth. The 6 realms. So there's 3 higher gatis and 3 lower gatis, right? We are up in the higher ones. Humans, gods, demigods. And the lower ones, animals, hungry ghosts, hell beings. So this categorization can name any sort of religious practitioner. Even Christians, right? Or people in Judeo-Christian beliefs. You wish for higher rebirth. I want to go to heaven, not hell, right? That fits anybody or any religious tradition. Then the sort of medium scope is the person who wishes to leave samsara altogether. So wants to leave the 6 realms. Well, if you leave the 6 realms, you get outside those 6 realms that Yama holds in its mouth, right? The Buddha is depicted, hopefully. Oh, I thought there was an image there. Outside of that, those 6 realms, right? The Buddha's outside of those. Why? Because he escaped samsara. So the second, the middle and wish, speaking religiously, is to get out of samsara. That's the beginning of Buddhist practice. Renunciation, serious renunciation, right? I say serious because I don't know, I can't speak for yourself, but I must like it at some level, or I'd be trying harder to get out. You know what I mean? Like if it was really that easy, it's hey, Muslims on the other side of the law. Why are we all still sitting here? Why aren't we fighting each other to get there? But that marks the beginning of stepping onto the Buddhist path. Renunciation. It's hard, but it's just the beginning of the Buddhist path. And then the highest scope describes those people who wish to attain enlightenment, to get out, but they don't care if they get out first. In fact, they want to open the door for everybody else to attain enlightenment first. And that when they see everybody else, when samsara is emptied, wow, then they too can exit. Whew. Okay, that's a big wish. That's a Mahayana wish. Oh, that's Mahayana motivation. So based on that, beings who have the motivation to liberate all beings, then that's the beginning of the Mahayana. The Mahayana emphasizes two things: wisdom and compassion. Two wings of a bird. Gotta have both. But the thing is, so certain beings are spiritual saints. An arahat, someone who renounces, someone who renounces, right? And is really good at practice. And what does he practice? What's the meditation look? Apart from these five aggregates, there's none self. Atmanara. The Mahayana is bigger. The wish is bigger. So, the Mahayana spreads this huge blanket and says, whereas Theravadins made a distinction, they said, we're going to concentrate on realizing Atmanara, though there are real dharmas in the world. This is what a lot of Buddhists don't get. Theravadins, and I'm not saying, I'm not trying to disparage Theravadins, because I think anybody who can free themselves of greed, hatred, and delusion, they've done a big job. But the early Theravada schools distinguished themselves, they were 18, they distinguished themselves by the number of dharmas that they considered real.
What do you mean by dharma? Sorry.
Dharma, small d, means any experienceable phenomena. Small d. So these early Theravada schools about and they distinguished themselves. Some schools said, we count that there are 75 real dharmas. Now, these real dharmas were nirvana, space, things like that. But they distinguish them now. They count 75 dharmas. They count 50 dharmas. We recognize 20 dharmas. And that's part of how they distinguish which schools they were. Okay. But if you take that with practice, it seems as though they're saying, the meditation hook is, apart from these five ever-changing aggregates, the skandhas, since they're always changing, they can't form a permanent self. So apart from these five ever-changing skandhas, we know there is no permanent self. We're going to focus on that, even though there's the idea that there's a dharma theory, and Theravadins had this, a dharma theory, that some dharmas existed in the world realistically, meant that some dharmas could hurt you. It meant that your sila had to be tight. Your conduct, your moral conduct had to be tight, because some things in the world existed that could harm you. This Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, was the Buddha of Shila, the Buddha of conduct. The future Buddha, the next Buddha, will be the Buddha of love. That's Maitreya. But Siddhartha Gautama was the Buddha of conduct. So conduct was essential to those Theravadins, right? Okay. It's like some things can push you away from your balance. So you have to look out. You have to check up there. Okay. Mahayana comes along with Prajnaparamita text, and it says, shunya, shunya, shunya. All things are empty of self. It has these sutras where Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassion, is saying to the exemplar of Theravada wisdom, Shariputra. Here, Shariputra, where I am in this Prajnaparamita meditative state, form is empty and emptiness is form. And then he goes through in the Heart Sutra to say, likewise, the Four Noble Truths, the six sense objects, the six sense bases, all those things are empty. which is a way of saying that the Theravada emptiness didn't quite cover it all. Prajnaparamita text come. The ideal practitioner is not an arahat any longer, one who has killed the enemies of greed, hatred, and delusion, but rather the bodhisattva. A bodhisattva, the Mahayana ideal, has both the heart that's set on bodhi, enlightenment, and the mind. So in these texts, what's important is compassion. What's talked about most is wisdom. Why is that the case? Why is wisdom always the last thing?
Because you can work on wisdom, whereas heart is, I mean, compassion is something that's spontaneous, maybe.
It
Whereas
is spontaneous.
wisdom, you can work on it.
Yeah, okay. Okay, you have to work on it because it's the only thing that'll liberate you. What's got you stuck in enlightenment? It's stuck in samsara. What's got us stuck? Ignorance, right? So wisdom is the only thing that can free us. All right, going along with, so thank you, right. Going along with Theravada, I just love this, now I need a blackboard. Going along with the Theravada ideal, the Arhat, the Dharma theory, Mahayana comes along and says, no. It's like the ancient Indian neti, not this. Now, it's not really different than what the Buddha taught. In the first discourse, the Buddha said, "O monks, these two extremes are to be avoided. The extreme which clings to overindulgence in sense pleasures," he said, "and an extreme that clings to overindulgence in ascetic mortification." But that same middle path he taught on for the next 45 years. And this Mahayana wants to say, we have to develop, a bodhisattva has to develop both compassion and wisdom. Okay, I will say, I will come at this 2 or 3 different ways, hopefully not be too confusing. So the Theravadan form of Shila, moral deportment, was defined as 3 higher training, the 3 Adi Shikshas. There's the training in Shila, conduct, in Samadhi, in meditation, and then in wisdom. Mahayana, which is all about expanding, right? It's becoming great. It's all about expansion. Took those 3 and divided them into 6. So in the Mahayana, a bodhisattva is said to practice 6 perfections. Dana, then Shila. There's also a historical and social things going on. You need donations, right? So you put giving above Shila. It was a Mahayana thing because the Mahayanas were about moving closer to the community, not being ascetics, being in the cities. So they needed to develop stupas. They needed to develop religious paraphernalia. They needed donations. It's simple. It's simple. They weren't hermits anymore. They were back with the people. Okay, so they developed from the 3, they develop into 6. And the 6 are dana, giving, and that's giving, not just giving donations to the Buddhists, it's giving fearlessness to beings. It's really helping, right? You give the gift that liberates being. Okay. Then Shila, so giving is put above Shila. Then something called Shanti, or patience. Patience. Oh. I'll be talking this weekend about Shantideva's way of the Bodhisattva. And he says at the beginning of the chapter on patience, all the good that comes from making offerings to the Buddhas of countless aeons is destroyed in 1 second of anger. That's why patience is so important. Forbearance is so important because you can shatter a lot of work by the wish to harm another. Hmm? Yeah. So we have Donna, Sheila, Shanti, Virya, energy, joyful energy. You have, let me, she said to me when I was complaining, oh, I'm never going to graduate. I can't learn all these things. I just can't. He says, what, daughter? Call me daughter. He said, please go after every new thing that you can learn with the aim that you might one day be able to help one person because you learned that one thing. You know, learn Hindi. You might be able to save someone from drowning because you know that Hindi word. So when you go in to learn that language, go into it joyfully. You know, so you straighten me out. I'm complaining, right? Go into everything you do with this kind of joyful energy. Makes it much easier to do too. So you got, what have I got there? 4? Donna, Sheila, Shanti, Virya, then meditation. Then meditation, you see, called jhana here, not samadhi. And then wisdom, prajna. So the text I'm talking about tonight, that was a long introduction. Nobody said yes. I'm trying to make it light and fun. You know, the text I'm talking about tonight are the texts on wisdom. On the weekend, I'll be talking about the other 5 paramitas. Why are they called paramitas? One English translation is that a bodhisattva, someone treading the Mahayana path, can perform activities, all these activities, giving, you know, all these 6 activities or 5, can perform them with at the same time knowing that they're self. That's a big trick, isn't it? Whew. Because how many times during the day, okay, we hand off something. I'm going to give my phone to Therese. And you know why I'm going to do it? I hope she tells somebody. I hope she tells somebody, Professor Jan is generous. When we do things, generally, when we do things, it's to get something. It's to get something. We don't just do it freely out of love and compassion. Even giving all these cameras, okay. Even giving a gift. His Holiness says, if you give somebody a gift, while at the same time you are thinking you get something out of it, he says that's just a business transaction. That's how business operates. That's how a former president operates. Oh, okay, I said. His Holiness said it too. He said that's just transactional. That's business. That's not giving a gift. Right? So how many times have we actually given a gift freely, selflessly? So all these activities demand that we perform them selflessly. It's really, I think, a hard task. I think we got a chance to in our lives. We've all gotten a chance to do something selflessly. Can you think of any times? You see somebody really in danger, a kid, for example, or a child, your child, right? About to get in some serious harm, and you just snatch them. When you snatch them, you're thinking of them, not yourself. That's a flash of insight. That's a flash of wisdom. What these texts mean by wisdom. It means doing an action without considering self. Okay.
Can I
So,
ask a question?
yes, you can. Yes.
So you said doing an action around perfections like generosity without thinking of self, but so often without the ignorance that grasps that true existence. So it's a bit different, right? You emphasize like when you describe it now is without thinking of I will get this or for me, but I can and not like that maybe someone can do a generosity, but without thinking of himself would feel like thinking, still grasping at objective reality. So,
I'm not sure I'm getting your question.
like you said, without how I understood you is without self-cherishing, without thinking of
Mhm.
yourself, but you didn't say about without self-grasping ignorance, without grasping at true existence, but not necessarily together, right?
I don't
Not
know that I'm
necessarily.
getting, I'm sorry. I'm thinking it may be the same thing. I'm thinking I'm trying to say the same thing.
They're the same.
But if you help someone
Mhm,
for their sake,
mhm,
for this child's sake, not
Mhm.
only thinking about this child,
mhm.
but you see this child as truly existing, a truly existing Dharma,
Ah.
then it's not the act of a Bodhisattva,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Okay.
So, but you said, but if you do it without thinking of yourself,
Mhm.
of your importance,
Mhm.
then it's the act of Bodhisattva.
Maybe this will answer. I'm not sure. The Prajnaparamita texts deal with this. Just the two I've mentioned, the main two, Heart Sutra, Diamond Sutra. Heart Sutra says, wherever there's form, there's emptiness. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. They're found together, right? Oh, now we get into a little Zen. Lin Chi said, before I studied the Dharma, mountains were mountains and rivers were rivers. But now that I've studied the Dharma, mountains are no longer mountains and rivers no longer rivers. But then, now that I'm old and wizened, mountains are again mountains and rivers again rivers. Now, that's the third time there is a recognition that the mountains are there and they're empty. The rivers are there and at the same time they're empty. So they're together, they're the same. If you perform an action to save a child, there is no self in that. You're just thinking about the child. The Diamond Sutra says, and I asked Swami Hishu, I was so clever. So I'm reading this sutra, and I said, like, then why should we work so hard? I wasn't that arrogant and bratish, but I said, Lama, then why should we work so hard since beings don't exist anyway? So first he said, you and beings exist in the same way, daughter. I thought, me? What? Aren't special. Then he said, because I was still puzzled, he said, don't worry about it. When you see it like this, you won't be worried. You just keep practicing, daughter. So, but the Diamond Sutra says, after the Diamond Sutra says, it's this dialogue between the Buddha and Subhuti, and the Buddha says, Subhuti, have I ever taught any Dharma? And Subhuti said, no, Lord, you have never taught any Dharma, because what you've taught as Dharma is really no Dharma. And the Buddha says, well, Subhuti, then it goes on, and it's just paradoxical, right? And Japanese Zen loves those paradoxes. They're joyful, Oh, but at the end of the Diamond Sutra, when it's gone back and forth for 35 pages, as opposed to the Heart Sutra, was just a page and a half. 35 pages going back and forth with this paradoxical thing. The last paragraph says, and yet the Bodhisattva, realizing emptiness of all things, still acts in the world for the benefit of being. Yeah, still the Bodhisattva acts for the benefit of beings. Even realizing all these 35 pages before. Yeah, they're empty. No, the Buddha never taught anything. No, it's no, it's empty, it's empty, it's empty, it's empty. And yet, the final paragraph says, act for the benefit of beings. Sometimes Bodhisattvas in Tibetan are called brave Bodhisattvas. Brave Bodhisattvas. Because you enter a world. Anybody read, what is his name? Carlos Castaneda in the old days. Oh, that's so 80s. That's so 80s. You read that? Mm-hmm. Do you remember Journey to Ixalan and those kind of, you go on these, I used to say, oh, wow, no. Seems like he's on to something, but will I come back? My students come. If I study too much of this wisdom thing, will I disappear, Professor? That's all they're worried about. Will there be someone there for beings to love? And I try to say, yeah. And you come about through causes and conditions. That's all emptiness means. That's all. But you're still here, and you're each individual, because at Wesleyan, you have to be an individualist. So you're each individuals, because you came about through specific causes and conditions, including your parents, including your culture, including your society. You're different, you're unique, and yet you're empty. You shouldn't, shouldn't, I shouldn't. It's about clinging to self. It's about clinging to something. First, it's about making up and then clinging to that. That's the real ignorance. Got time for one more example? Clinging to illusion. You see dependent origination, and emotions lead to this misperception. Emotions. So here's the example. 3 months ago, I went to the Equal Justice Initiative, founded in Montgomery, Alabama, by a man named Brian Stevenson, who's worked much. He's defended cases before the United States Supreme Court. He deals with children around rural South, children who are tried as adults and given life sentences or the death penalty. We still have that in states in America. And this young man, Brian Stevenson, he's young compared to me. He fights for children. They get those laws overturned to get children tried as children if they're going to be tried at all. Okay, so I went to this museum because he opened up a new wing. I went to the gala when it opened up, and all these great dignitaries and stars came, and Patti LaBelle sang. And, it was just wonderful. And he recognized everybody who'd ever marched in the civil rights campaign. So we all in the audience got to stand up. It was wonderful. But so I went to that museum. Okay. And we had to stay overnight because there's 3 different parts to the museum. And it's very much expanded since it opened a few years ago. Now, here's the example. So I went with 2 friends. And one of the friends, a couple, the man bought a water bottle. Follow me? He bought a water bottle from the Equal Justice Initiative Museum. So that night I thought about it, and I said, before we go back to Atlanta, gee, I want to get a water bottle. I think I saw one, and it had a specific graphic that I liked. It said EJI, and I really liked the graphics. Okay. Follow all these points now. The next day we went back. And Larry said to me, I don't remember seeing a water bottle like that. He had already bought one, I said, oh, you bought the other one. I want this one. It has this kind of lettering on it. So we went to the museum shop. Not there. I looked and looked and looked. I said, they must have sold out. So I went to the cashier. I said, didn't you have a water bottle with this kind of graphic on that said EJI? He said, no, ma'am. This was the South, right? No, ma'am, I don't believe we ever did. I said, just a minute. I know I saw it yesterday. I saw that water bottle. It was black and the writing was in white and it said EJI. So he said, I'll ask for you. I said, good, because I'm going to wait till you find out. He asked somebody else. She said, no, I don't think we ever saw one that looked like that. I was really getting upset because I know what I had seen and that's what I want. All right. Against my friends saying, no, we didn't see a water bottle like that. Against 2 tellers saying, no, ma'am, we never sold it. I was convinced that it existed because I wanted it. Now, I'm suggesting that what we do every day is we project an I, that is Jan Willis. And then we want the world to be as we see it. That's a big illusion, but we've had it a long time. It's an illusion, though. I know if I philosophically do the analysis, okay, I haven't looked the same all these years. You know, I've grown, so I know I'm changing, right? So I know I'm not fixed, Jan Willis, and still I have this strong feeling that I know who I am. And we cling to that I. When the Buddha became light, he let go of it. That's why I say he must have been a light walking. He let go of that I, me, mine. And he just lived. That's seeing different. That's seeing without clinging to it. Got that example? I thought, oh, I did good. I made an example that even I understood. Okay, yeah. But it's first we project. First, there was desire. Then I projected something. Then I went after it. And no, not even friends could tell me it didn't exist.
But seriously, you made it up?
I made it up. They said they never had sold anything like that. I made it up in my mind. I saw the graphics. I could have designed a new work bottle for them, but they had never sold it. But I was convinced. That's why I had them drive me back to that place. I was convinced. That's an example.
Thank you.
I hope it's okay. So the Bodhisattva is the ideal practitioner in Mahayana, and he has, or she, sorry, has both. In Sanskrit, chitta means heart and mind. You know that, heart and mind. So Bodhisattva is one who possesses both the heart and the mind. That's set on Bodhi. That's all about Bodhi. Not nirvana. That's individual. But Bodhi, which is what the Buddha attained. That kind of knowledge that could free all beings. And there were these group of texts which made it compassion is there because these texts claim with empty self, it spontaneously arises with wisdom, with Prajnaparamita. Oh, paramita, as I said, was transcendent. It means selflessness. It's based on the verb e. You wouldn't think that paramita is based on the word e. Ita is gone. And so gone to the highest, gone furthest, gone paramita, gone to the other. That's why some sutras name the Heart Sutra, gone to the other shore. Gate para samgate bodhisvaha. Can you define it? No. It's beyond words. It's experiential. That's why it's so important for Zen, because the paradox is just a joke in a way. The philosophy is just a joke. But at the end of both of those sutras, you're given something to do that is experiential. At the end of the Heart Sutra, it said, therefore. Therefore comes right out of the blue. Like, what? Therefore? I mean, you do philosophy, you go, what the hell? Therefore? There was no argument just placed there. Therefore, it says, therefore, the mantra, the sacred mantra is proclaimed. Gate para samgati bodhisvaha. Bodhi is beyond, gone completely beyond. That's what Bodhi is. Now, so be it. We've been trying to tell you through this paradox, you can't get it through words. The Diamond Sutra gives us a gift another way. The Diamond Sutra. I hope I'm making some sense to some beings here. Okay, the Diamond Sutra at the end, which is why Zen folk like it, and Tibetan folk like it too, it gives you, after all this Have I done any? Have I taught anything? Subhuti, no, Lord, you haven't taught anything. Will there be beings who at the end of the time can understand what you taught? Yes, he says. That's the ending paragraph that says, so you go out there and work for beings. Anyway, sometimes in the Diamond Sutra, there's a yes answer. And it's always shocking because you just expect it's just like, no, 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 you know it's no. And then Subhuti sometimes says, yes, Lord. That'll catch you up. So study Diamond Sutra, and in the end, you're given a set of similes. That's the gift. That's the experiential bit. It says, what? Last line. At the end, it lists this group of famous similes. This, quote, this is how to contemplate our conditioned existence in this fleeting world, like a tiny drop of dew, or a bubble floating in a stream, like a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, or a flickering lamp, an illusion, a phantom, or a dream. This is how one should view all conditioned things. Right? So you hear the impermanence, you hear the fleeting. So that experiential part is like the gift of the Heart Sutra's gift of the mantra. And so, in whatever Mahayana institution you go, whether Hawaii or Japan or California, someone's job there is to recite the Heart Sutra continuously, 24/7. I've tried this out in a number of places. I've never been disappointed though. You know, do you have someone here reciting the Heart Sutra? Yes, we do. Go around, somebody's sitting in a little cubbyhole reciting the Heart Sutra. Arms into this. It's a practice. Just like Shantideva's Bodhicharya Avatar is a practice. It should be read, recited, constantly thought about. All monks, nuns, people recited aloud, people chanted. On the weekend, we're going to do that. We're going to read it aloud. Why? Because at chapter 7, verse 18, it says, even the gnats and grubs will attain enlightenment if they hear one verse of this sutra. So you see, Tibetans, I've asked people, I saw you out there running through the meadow. What were you singing? Singing the way of the Bodhisattva. That's what I was doing, Professor Jan, because even the gnats and grubs, if they hear it, will attain enlightenment. So sweet. So sweet. They do it that way with that intention. Oh, okay. Now I guess I better get to this. So the literature. These texts I told you about, and I've said something about the heart and the diamond. Okay. So these texts, even though they were written over centuries, right? 100 BCE to 500 or 600 CE. I'll tell you about. These texts are all credited to the philosopher who talks so much about it. So there are these legends that sometime Nagarjuna, who was in the 2nd century. So how did he get a hold of the Prajnaparamitas written in the 6th century? But at any rate, it's said that Nagarjuna went to the land of the Nagas, the wisdom beings, wrestled them. That's what his name means. Arjuna means conquered. Nagas, he conquered the Nagas, so his name is Nagarjuna. And he came back with these horses loaded down with these 38 texts. That's what the legend says. Nagarjuna came back with these texts. Now, the other, maybe non-legendary part, it's still hard to see how he got text written in the 6th century from the 2nd century. The other part is that he came back with all these texts, and they all had a general theme. Now, the Prajnaparamita texts were the second turning. Do you know what that means? the second turning, right? The beginning Maya. But the Prajnaparamita text served as the textual basis for these two philosophical schools, Madhyamaka, that Nagarjuna really did found and expound, Shunyata, and Yogacara. Yogacara all by itself is called a third turning. And people say, how can something that they call, I'm getting that, Marie, to ask you folks about, how can something that we call idealism comes after all this talk about emptiness? Well, it's not that Yogacara is idealism. This is too technical, I'm sorry. I know it's not said textually, but what word was I trying to say technically? Tika is this. The Prajnaparamita text being expounded led to philosophical schools, Madhyamaka and Yogacara. But Nagarjuna's teachings were so erudite that lots of Buddhists lost faith.
What's erudite?
Lost erudite. He was so intellectual, smart. All he talked about was shunya, that people, you could feel it like this. It's like, I'm sorry, this was I'll just tell you this train of thought. Lama Yeshe and Zopa Rinpoche worked as a team, right? But I remember when Lama Yeshe would say to Lama Zopa, you wouldn't have to teach, and Lama Zopa would try to hide. No, please don't make me teach these courses. But then, of course, he could do it, right? But they worked it as a team. So every day, Lama Zopa would say, early on, I didn't know what your experience was, but early on, I've heard Lama Zopa say, if you mix Dharma with non-Dharma, to go back to our Shila beginning, conduct, Lama Zopa Rinpoche would say, if you mix Dharma practice with what's non-Dharmic, then it's not Dharma. You're doing, right? You heard him say that, right? So he was saying that for 29 days of the month. And if you watch the people, if you weren't part of the course, you just sort of came up and watched them, they would go. But it's impossible to do this. Impossible. So I'm watching them, they go, no way. It's impossible. And then Lama Yeshe would come the last night. The last night of the course, Lama Yeshe would come, he'd look at everybody, he'd get this big smile, and he'd say, oh, come on now. You just do the best you can, dear. It's enough. Then everybody, oh, hey, oh, thank you so much. Thank you. They worked it as a team. That was just the way it was going to go. You had to be serious about it. And then Lama would say, you do the best you can. Good cup, bad cup. Yeah. You just do the best you can. And everybody was just light and joy. Okay. So Nagarjuna said so much shunyata. Buddhist got discouraged. That's why 200 years after Nagarjuna, my PhD guy, a Sangha comes along. Nagarjuna is known as the head of the wisdom lineage. A Sangha is known as the head of the compassion lineage. Like my thought. So why? What did Sangha Yogacara guy do? He said, Nagarjuna's making it seem that there's no place to stand. It's either, illusion, or the reality of emptiness. So people are going, Huh? Then the Sangha said, no, there's not just two, there's not just relative and absolute, which is what people took from Nagarjuna. And absolute is emptiness. So it's not just those two, Sangha said, there's really three. He said, there is actually a thing, he called it a vastu, a basis, on which we apply names. The names are totally illusory, but the names are placed onto something which is actually there. And there is a third stage, which is paramata, in Asanga's way, which is the absolute truth. So he gave a basis, literally basis of us to a thing. So that's why in the end of the Diamond Sutra, they can say to the Bodhisattvas, don't give up because all is emptiness. There's still a reason for you. There's still people in ignorance. There's still people that you can grant fearlessness to. Go on, do your job. Okay, I don't know whether that was clear, but this Asanga came along, and and Asanga's Yogacara made a way. So here's the other part of it. So there's 3 instead of 2. He expanded. Mahayana keeps expanding. There's 3 stages, not 2. The other part of what Asanga did was he said, in the first turning of the wheel, there was concentration on this meditative hook that things were changing, and so there was no permanent self, but there were real dharmas. There was a dharma theory. Then Nagarjuna came along and said, no dharma theory, all dharmas are empty. And then Asanga came along and said, let's not focus on what's outside the dharma theory. Let's not focus on emptiness. Let's focus on what the mind does when it contacts things. Let's focus on that. That made a way for yoga and for tantra. Use the mind creatively. Use the mind so that you know things aren't there. They're there holographically, like the Buddha at the beginning. Use the mind like, beam me down, Scotty. And where you are sitting, there's emptiness. And from that, create a deity. Asanga made that possible. The 3 turnings of the wheel of dharma. Okay, now that's a bit much. Now the big thing is, so where did Nagarjuna go to come up with the Prajnaparamita text? He conquered it. He won over the Nagas. The other speculation is he went to South India. In South India, there was a Greek cult, matriarchal Greek Sophia cult. He might have hooked up with them. He might have, because for the first time, not only does he come back with all these texts, but these texts are dedicated for the first time to, not to the Buddha, but to a goddess. Like the goddess Sophia in South India was by the Greeks and so forth. These texts are dedicated to God. This is how I got literature and the goddess. Finally, we get to the subject matter of this talk. One of the distinguishing features about Prajnaparamita literature is they are dedicated to a goddess. The first time. It's the first time in Buddhist literature. The texts themselves are dedicated to the lovely, the holy, the goddess, Prajnaparamita, feminine noun. To God. Oh, I feel like I've talked enough. Let's see some pictures. Here's how the goddess Prajnaparamita is depicted. And there are just a few, and there you will recognize the ornaments and the iconography. I think I put 8 slides together. This is the goddess Prajnaparamita. Now remember I said some of those texts are 125,000 slokas. There's a tantric practice of Prajnaparamita. Lots of Tibetans in their namtaras, in their life stories, they spend their whole lives just doing the practice of Prajnaparamita. That's enough, because you get that, you'll have it, right? You'll have the perfection of wisdom. So they dedicate their time not to Sangha, not to Avalokiteshvara, just Prajnaparamita, the goddess. The smallest Prajnaparamita text is the syllable
Oh,
It's the Prajnaparamita practice. These are how she looks. So some things are common. I don't know if you can make it out there. There's the wisdom book, Prajnaparamita. And is that a Dorje? I can't quite see it from here. Oh, I can look here. Okay, so there's a book. There's a Dorje and the sword. And she's 4-armed in this one. So some things are similar. It doesn't matter how long we stay on these. Just want to give people an idea of this goddess and how she looks and what her different implements were. So sometimes she's 4-armed, sometimes she's 2-armed, sometimes she's 6-armed. Tikaha. So here's a 4-armed Prajnaparamita. Tikaha. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a goddess on a Prajnaparamita text from a book cover. All right, this is a 4-armed deity too. She's holding the book like the one just before, the book and the dorje. Huh? And I can't tell because I can't really see it closely enough. I made the slides. Oh, don't worry about it. This is on a book cover, Tibetan page.
Is that her Sanskrit name? This Prajnaparamita, is that Sanskrit or is it?
That's Sanskrit and that's her name. It's a Tibetan text on the right, you see.
Okay,
That's Tibetan.
so she doesn't have Tibetan name.
Yeah. Tibetan was created to translate Sanskrit text. Sanskrit was text. There was no written language.
Oh.
So they made a written language to translate Buddhist scriptures from India, right? So yes, there's a Tibetan way of saying, just if you had a dictionary, concordance. There's a Tibetan way of saying it, and it's paro tool. It's not on this.
Okay,
This says something else. Oki kun something la kun na. Ah, tiga. Oh, how we do it? Time myself. Good. Okay. I can't read. Can you guys make that out?
Which one?
Just what her implements are. I think it's the same. She's holding a dorje in the uplifted right hand and the book, the Prajnaparamita on the left. And what is her middle arms? What are they doing?
Isn't that the sutra of turning the wheel?
I think you're right. Could be teaching mudra, turning the wheel. Yes, which fingers are touching? In classic, yeah, I think you're right, Francesca. You're absolutely right. Next slide, please. No, that won't help me. This looks kind of nice. This one's kind of nice, and instead of the dorje, you've got Manjushri's sword in her upraised right hand, right? So the artist, it's like with a rag. You have a set iconography, but you can do it sort of how you want. You can play those 7 notes of a rag. I've never heard a raga played the same way twice, but the notes are exactly the same. But the emotion and all that. So here, I like this one. Just put it there because I liked it. She's surrounded by all these lamas, redhead lamas, we'll note. So, and her hands in the middle are just, seems to me. Francesca, do you see anything? I think she's just doing the mudra of the Buddha.
Seems a mudra of samadhi.
Yeah, of samadhi, yeah. Tikaha. So the only difference here is the sword has replaced the dorje. So Manjushri and Manjushri, it's wisdom. Okay, next one, please. This one's a little busier. So the teaching mudra, you're right, in the middle hand, and a crystal mala in the upraised right hand. So the meeting of wisdom and compassion. Wisdom book in the left hand, that's a crystal mala. Avalokiteshvara's mala in her right. That's a really busy tanka. I don't know where I got that one. These different styles of Tibetan painting. Okay, next one, please. Okay, there are also sculptures. And this matches the meditative pose and the dorje and the Prajnaparamita book. This is an old statue, yeah, okay. Next one, please. In Java, Goddess Prajnaparamita. In Cambodia, I'm sorry. Cambodia. I don't know what that is in the left. That may be something called, it may be another book, but it doesn't look like the book that's in the right hand. I don't know. It says 12th century, Prajnaparamita, Cambodia. Nice. I'd like to know what's in that left hand. Don't know.
So this means that
You've
Cambodia
seen
was
this one.
Mahayana before being, now it's all Theravada.
Yeah,
So in the 12th century, it was
right.
Mahayana.
Thailand too. There was some Mahayana there. Now it's mainly, yeah, it's true. There was. And this one, you may have seen this one before. This one's kind of famous. But it's Prajnaparamita. Beautiful. And there's just the book on the lotus at her left. And what is she doing? That's a mudra too. Can you see it, Francesca? Now I'm counting on you. You're the artist in the group. You'll tell us. I love this statue. And more recently, I found out it was Prajnaparamita. Prajnaparamita Devi. Thank you. 13th century.
How do you recognize it's Prajnaparamita?
That's what was listed everywhere, and that's what scrolled underneath her name.
Sorry, can I ask something?
Sure.
On the computer.
Who's speaking? How?
Here on the computer. Hi. I was just wondering because I'm a bit confused. So Prajnaparamita is demigod or because
Oh no. No.
Devi, I thought the Devi or Deva are demigods.
Oh no, it's just a term. It means that she's a goddess.
She's a god.
Mahadevi was the Buddha's mother, for example. That was her name, Mahadevi.
Okay.
Okay.
And some similarity because her hands were like pinkish, like the lotus flower. And I saw some similarities to Lord Vishnu or Shiva from the Hinduism, that their hands are also like pinkish. Is this some kind of similarity or?
I think it's a similarity, yes. I mean, sometimes you see there are these great shows of Buddhist art, and then sometimes you walk into a room and they might even have something labeled Buddhist that's clearly Vishnu, or labeled Buddhist and it's Jain. You can come to recognize these iconographic forms, and there are many books on it. I'm not an art historian, but this deity, this stone carving is of Prajnaparamita, and the Javanese say that's who she is. And the Devi doesn't make that much of a difference. It's just a way of saying goddess.
Okay, so she's a reincarnation of.
No, this is important because this is the thing about Prajnaparamita as the goddess. She is not the goddess who represents. She is the goddess of the perfection of wisdom. I haven't spent enough time in this talk pointing this out. Her practice is where many deities represent, Avalokiteshvara represents the Buddha's compassion. She represents Buddha's wisdom. This is, now I feel like I'm just speaking to a mic. I'm leaning over into your mic. I think that's the end of the slideshow. Thank you. This is what is important about the goddess. She's not a goddess on the level of she represents. And this is why. In early Buddhism, the figure of the mother was a disparaging one. In early texts that I have time to read you now, the imagery of women and femaleness and the feminine was negative in Buddhist texts as well as other texts. In general, in texts we have of the time, Sanskrit texts that are talking about Aryan society, for example, the woman is disparaged. She's only glorified. I mean, she doesn't belong to Aryan society, for example. I just can't do this. I have to have a chart and show you. Aryan society recognized 4 varnas, and each one of those varnas have subdivisions. It recognized 4 stages of life, and each one of those had a few subdivisions. If you need to stand, I should have said, you feel free to do so. And you'll not really a break just yet, but if you need to stretch, please do that. And there were 3 stages. There were 3 things you could desire for Aryan society, for example. You could desire to do your religious duty. You could desire to make profit at your job. You could desire, period, comma, not karma, but comma, Kama Sutra, sexual desire. That was yours. But you had to obey these rules. India and China didn't count women in the official makeup of society. Women were not counted in Indian Aryan society, though Indian society remains the largest democracy on earth. Indian society always recognized that people were not the same. Whereas America tries to put that out, that, you know, recognizes equality and so forth. India always recognized that beings were not the same. And so they had a Varna system, and they had a rigid class, and the Buddha turned all that over. He said beings from any of these Varnas, these castes, can come in. From any of these jatis, from any birth stations, they can come in. From any of the stages of life, they can come in to my Sangha, right? They can come in at whatever age. And then he blew everybody's mind. He said women can come in too. And they hadn't even belonged in Arya society. And in India and China, the longest contiguous societies in which women had so-called 3 obediences. They were obedient to their parents. They were obedient to their husband. They were obedient to their son if they were lucky enough to have. Because they were married at an earlier age than the husband, they were usually widowed. A widow was pariah, poisonous to everybody. Children ran away from her. So the devoted wife, the sati, was one who burned herself on the funeral pyre of her husband. And if she did that, he won 35 million years in heaven. Don't know what she won, but, you know, I mean, come on, you know, so, and this is still practiced, unfortunately, in parts of India, but still today. There are satis. The British thought it was that ritual of burning the wife, but a sati means one who's a devoted wife, one who's a part of reality, sat. She's in accordance with sat. She's doing the right thing. Okay. The Buddha allowed widows. This overturned Aryan society. This was really remarkable. He allowed all these people to come together. These are people who would run away from a widow if they saw her. Okay, now, even in early Buddhism, a woman was a synonym for samsara. Why? Because she gave birth. She gave birth, which meant she was part of the continual becoming of being. So, in a lot of Theravadan literature, a woman, by virtue of being a mother, is something you want to know. Because it was written for men. And it was written for the early Buddhist community when the Buddha was trying to found a male monastic order. And you got to change these men's psychology overnight because it's a mendicant society. They have to go back into societies where they see women. They have to overnight change their opinions of women. You know, they have to see them in a really negative light, or they'll go back. They'll leave the robes. No, you get texts that say a nun, the Buddha's devoted cousin, who becomes the first feminist according to Japanese nuns because he sued for the admission of the Buddha's stepmom, Mahayana Prajnapati, into the order. 3 months out of the year, Japanese nuns do rituals for a nun as the first feminist. But if you know his life story, you know he was quite a playboy before the Buddha brought him in. You can read these life stories, but they're not translated. So you have to learn the languages so you can read them. All the characters you read about in the sutra, their life stories are written down. That's how you know a nun was a playboy. So it's so ironic that he became the first feminist. He loves women, all right. Tika. Oh, okay.
Ananda? Or the-
Ananda,
Ananda.
the one who says Eva Maya, the Buddha had to wean him off women to get him to come join him. Yeah, and these texts of life stories are recorded in texts that are called avadanas. Avadanas, they're life stories of all these people you read about in the sutra. But so I'm not going there. I'm saying what early Buddhism said, what early texts said about women. They said because women generate babies, because they partake in that motherhood, they're the synonym for samsara. And it's because you're trying to found this, I think, this is a positive spin I put on. Okay, you're trying to find an organization where the men can stay celibate. And you have to change the way they look at women. But these changes took really negative views of them. So when you have a text that's dedicated to a female goddess who is known as the mother of all Buddhas, who is Prajnaparamita, there is no Buddha without Prajnaparamita, right? There is no Buddha possible without the perfection of wisdom. She is their mother. And in this light, mother is revalorized. It's just, ooh, there's no Buddha without her. I hope you're getting the feeling of this because it was really big to see texts devoted to her. So this is what some of the early texts said about women. Even as a nun saying, showing his true colors, he says, Master, says a nun, how shall we behave before women? A nun wants to know. The Buddha said, you should shun their gaze. I got to go back begging in the village. You're going to see women. You're going to see former lovers, former housewives, former kids. You got to get your mind together now. And it means shunning these women you used to be close to. Master, how should we? You should shun their gaze. Don't look at them. You might get caught, might get trapped. There's some dangerous folk. All that. And then a nun persists, but Master, if we see them, do not speak to them, a nun. Don't speak. But if we do speak, Lord, what then? Then you must watch over yourself, Anan. Watch over yourself, says one text. Anguttara Nikaya, Pali. Monks, I know of no other single form, sound, scent, savor, and touch, by which a woman's heart is so enslaved as it is by the form, sound, scent, savor, and touch of a man. Monks, a woman's heart is obsessed by these things. Monks, you're trying to find a celibate order. Monks, women folk end their life unsated and unreplete with two things. What two? Sexual intercourse and childbirth. These two things. Don't say nothing about the man's part in it. But anyway, you know, no man who is not possessed, who is firm in his Sheila, should ever trust a woman.
Wow. And that's Dharma.
This is in Buddhist Pali canon. Yeah. Yeah, I just taught a course on the founding of the nuns order and the Buddha's hesitation to do it. But what you need to know is you can critique these texts and you can see how contradictory they are. And you can see how many different voices in it, not even a single author. And then when you know when it was written and somebody comes along and says at this particular time in India, nuns were doing better than monks, you see a motive behind that text being written. And yet that text is canonical. And that's its danger. It's canonical, it's hierarchical, and when people seek people today for gatherings with His Holiness, one of the rules in that text of the founding of the nuns order says, a nun who's been ordained 100 years must still rise up, greet, respectfully bow down before a monk who's been ordained but that day. And they're seated that way also. And it's canonical. People will quote it. No, that's why we did it. And you can show that that text was fabricated at a much later time. You can show it if you're someone like me or if somebody who reads those texts and can analyze those texts. That should not be a canonical text, but that's what Buddhists, current day Buddhists say. It's in the canon. We have to follow the canon. No, you don't. You should be able to be open to reason when somebody can show that text is not an early text at all. Here's one. Fools lust for women like dogs in heat. They don't know abstinence. So you're not fools, monks, so don't. Women ruin the precepts. Women ruin the precepts of purity. They're quite misogynist texts. So when you have Prajnaparamita text like the diamond, it not only gives you those similes, but in the Diamond Sutra, the Buddha says, those who by my form did see me, which has to do with the idea that a Buddha has 32 major and 80 minor marks. You may have heard of that. One of the major marks is having a penis.
In a small sheet.
In a small sheet. Okay, well, what are we
People
going to
say it
argue?
is a hermaphrodite.
It could.
Or say that
Or-
is a,
What else?
that
Could
is-
say it's yeah, people argue that. But the Buddha says once and for all, clean, clear, dear. Those who by my form did see me, and those who followed me by my voice, wrong the action they engaged in. Me, those beings will not see. You see the Buddha, he says, and the Dharma from the Dharmakayas. And no one can grasp the Buddha or the Dharma in language. So when he says that, it sort of puts an end to that, all that harping on women are bad, then go away from women. He says, that's not how you tell a Buddha, by what sex they are. Sort of. And they had said some really negative things. And they had said women were the synonym for samsara, right? Can't get any worse than that. So when the Buddha is made to say, everything is empty, like these Prajnaparamita texts all say, all of it. Don't discriminate. There's not a group of dharmas that are real and a group that you can say, are empty. Everything is empty. All those dharmas are empty. You can't base any judgments on, well, that dharma is more real. That female is more harmful than the male. Okay, so these Prajnaparamitas cleared the way for lots of things. And then they made the point, there is no Buddha without the perfection of wisdom. And then they made the perfection of wisdom female and feminine. And so that changed the picture, how mothers were viewed. No longer samsara. The only means of becoming a Buddha is through Prajnaparamita. And that's why some people just do the meditation on Prajnaparamita their whole life. Some people just do monies too. Money's their whole life, not really different. But some just practice the practice of Prajnaparamita. Why? Because attaining that practice or the results of that practice put you in pure perception mode of emptiness. So some people devote a lot of time. And this goddess, the idea that these texts are for the first time devoted to her, the mother of all beings, she's called in the 8,000. There is no way to Buddhahood except through her. Then that's a whole other way. That really is the Mahayana separating itself from Taoism. I know I was going to say something else right now.
What does it mean when they say, that I heard this verse and I was always thinking about it, when they say there is no other way, that's for the mother of wisdom. We talk about the mind of wisdom or the Goddess Prajnaparamita,
Are we talking about the mind?
the mind of wisdom, like a mind which has wisdom, or about the Goddess Prajnaparamita?
Well, if we're doing Tantra, we're talking about that goddess. That's the practice. But what I was saying earlier that I didn't finish was that in tantric practice, as I understand, one doesn't say that she merely represents compassion. That a being who represents wisdom is that wisdom. She no longer just represents wisdom, she's the perfection of wisdom. And that is the wisdom itself. I know that's.
So this verse has like a tantric meaning when you say.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Where is it from? What is the origin of the verse?
Sorry, where's the original?
Of
What?
the verse, there is no enlightenment without the mother of wisdom.
All the schools of Buddhism say wisdom is the only way you can get to enlightenment, right? It's the final step towards all enlightenment. This Prajnaparamita says she is the only way you get to enlightenment. She's the ultimate wisdom, not something that represents it. It's like, get the feeling for this. She is the ultimate way. She's the only way. She's the only vehicle that leads to your liberation. It's when you can sort of say, okay, you're saying she's not, how do you say that? How do you say it? She doesn't represent it, she is it. She is it.
embodies.
What?
She embodies.
Yes, good. She embodies that ultimate wisdom.
Could I give an example?
Yes, who is that?
Mikkel. Yeah.
Yes, please do.
No, I was just thinking about sometimes the Venerable Rubina, she talks about the similarity of Buddha and Einstein. And she says, you know, it's not like Einstein, he invented gravity to make the law of gravity. He just found out what was already there. And she, you know, when Rubina used to say the same thing about the Buddha, you know, it's like the wisdom of emptiness was there. It was not something that the Buddha invented. He didn't get it from somewhere in his own mind. He discovered what was already there. So for me, it's pretty simple way to think about it, maybe, but I think that is the Prajnaparamita is the wisdom of emptiness beyond time and space that is always there, present. It's what the universe is made of. It's the state of the whole universe from endless beginning to endless time. And she's the means by which we realize the wisdom of emptiness that the Buddha then describes and experienced himself. I don't know if that makes sense. That's how I understand it.
It's lovely, except the means to it takes me back to represents it, but she's more than that. She is itself this wisdom you talk about, right? Which the Buddha just discovered, but was always there. Yes. Thank you. I think that's really helpful. It's helpful to me. I don't know. Maybe it's helpful to you. Thank you. Miko. Thank you. I mean it. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, of course, that wisdom is always there. We just have to wake up. The Buddha stopped dreaming. He woke up.
Thank you.
Any other comments from those online?
Sorry, just a question. Does it mean that the ultimate wisdom is to realize that there is like nothingness?
No, it's not nothingness. Oh, it's emptiness, but that's not nothingness. Let's try it this way, Natalia. In the same way that the Buddha said these two extremes have to be avoided. Now let's talk about ontology. So we're saying on the one hand, it's incorrect to think that things exist eternally. They always exist, right? And it's also wrong to think that nothing exists. Something does exist. That was the Asanga example. He came up with, I think, something useful. He says something is there. It's not what we think. It's not what we experience, but something is there. And onto that, we place all sorts of names, like this is a phone, right? I walk in this room, This phone didn't yell over at me. Phone. It didn't tell me what it was. And in some places, oh, let's take a mirage. Oh, why does that show up in the desert? Because you're sort of looking for water, you're thirsty. So you project. It's not really there. This is like my water bottle thing, right? A mirage. You're thirsty. You project something in the middle of the desert, an oasis. Sometimes it's true, there's an oasis there, but most times, it's certainly for a mirage, it's never there. It's just a mirage, right? As much as you hoped it would be there, it's not there. It's a projection of the mind. Tika. So the Buddha said, in the same way, he said, avoid these two extremes between thinking that indulgence and sense pleasures and thinking that asceticism would lead to something good or spiritually good. He found a middle way, right? Oh, Asanga's middle way was this vastu, right? Sort of. Okay, I know I'm okay, fudging this. What the Buddha is saying when he says emptiness is things exist, but not as we think they do, right? There's something, but we don't see it as it really exists. We don't see it as being empty, for one thing. We think when we name something, the name actually characterizes the thing, even though we know. Tibetans call it a chokse. I call it a table. You call it something else. You know, there are different names for the same thing. And Asanga, who came up with that threefold thing, says our consciousness at different times of the day sees one and the same thing different, and therefore gives it a different name. So he's arguing the names are put onto something, but they don't accurately characterize what that thing is. Is this making sense, Natalia? It's not between nothingness. Emptiness is, you have to say, what is it empty of? Is it empty of a permanent self? Yes, you can say yes. Huh?
So there is not belief that we have a soul, or that there is still empty of this. I don't kind of understand what this is like empty of.
Things are empty of permanent existence. That means they exist, but impermanently. See, they exist in a way. The Buddha's big discovery at his enlightenment. Other people in India knew about reincarnation. That's what the Buddha saw in the first Watchman. He says, reincarnation, yeah, I think that's a fact. Other Indians knew that. Brihadaranyaka had said, you know, you could be reborn as a worm for stepping on a worm. They had said that long before the Buddha. Okay, so that wasn't new. Buddha came up with the divine eye. You could see the passings away, and that wasn't new. All right. But in the final watch of the night, he came up with this idea of dependent origination. And dependent origination means as long as the thing you were talking about was created, it came into existence at a certain time, and it could go out of existence at a certain time. It neither exists always or is nothing. It's something you put together. You know, it's the wheel in the chariot, you know, like, is the hand Jan Willis? Well, if it somehow got amputated, I'd still think I was Jan, right? Parts make up things. Okay, use. See this? If this, there is the Aristotelian here. If this thing existed right here, and it really existed like it is here, I couldn't do this. Because part of its, if we thought it existed permanently, part of its existence would be that it exists right here in this space. But it was Einstein, long before Einstein. He talked about shunyata, spatial things. He talked about impermanence, temporal things. And he said, they don't last. Nagarjuna said, It is precisely because things are void or empty that they have utility. It's void of being permanently here, that's why I can move it. That's the example. Do you see? If it were permanently here, it would be here for all time, and I couldn't move it. You see? All right, somebody give me an example quick.
The IKEA box, maybe?
IKEA box, what do? You get the box and you put stuff together?
Yeah, and you look for the eye, and there is no eye.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It's Venerable Venus.
Uh-huh.
That's how she does in fingers. I don't know if you want to use
I don't know if this is making any sense to you. Nagarjuna said, check out this way. Let's go at it another way. Nagarjuna said, between samsara and nirvana, there is not the slightest thread of difference. What does that mean? What changes is our view. What changes is our view, not the thing. It's not the slightest thread. The Buddha didn't come into the United States or to Zurich. The Buddha came into the world of suffering. It's not synonymous with the world. It's not synonymous with the world, right? He came hither to where there was suffering to address that problem. He never said, you know, you should hate this world. Never. Right? He's about being a doctor, getting us out of suffering. Natalia, I see you writing, but I don't know what you're thinking.
Okay, I will just have time to get some time to reflect and digest this, I think.
Okay, read this. Write this. Emptiness is not nothingness.
Yes.
That is not what it claims to be. It claims to be that things are dependent upon other things for their existence. And when they're dependent upon other things, they don't exist independently. They exist dependently, as much as we don't want to admit it. We're dependent. We were dependent on our parents. I went in one day and I said, oh, I've been away. I've been taking care. I went into an Indian restaurant in the States. I said, oh, I've been taking care of my father. And I sort of said it with like, you know, I've been putting forth effort. And this Indian restaurateur said to me, you will never, ever be able to repay it. And I thought, dang, I didn't know. You know, it's like, okay, I just want to put in the order. But he was right. Because no matter how many days I cared for my father, he had cared for me since I was born. That was a lot more days. You know, he bought a lot more food. He bought a lot more clothes. I'm dependent. As much as I don't want to feel like that, we are all dependent. Zen person eats a meal, they say, I give thanks for the 74 hands who brought this food to me. Recognizing dependence. Clear? That means we are not independent as much as we'd like to believe. We are independent beings. We couldn't make it without a day. We couldn't make it a day without help from others. That's dependent origination. We need help from others. We ought to give that help to others. We are part of a bigger thing, and we're all connected. That sounds like a place I ought to end on. It sort of ran up on me. That's the good thing we learn about dependent origination. It makes us grateful. And I think one way of defining bodhicitta is, how do you make your mind more loving? One of the ways you do it is you grow your response ability. You know, like we're in a world now where it's easy to be despairing, you know, climate change, these crazy elections, you know, it would be easy to become depressed by things. But someone like, okay, now I'm going off topic altogether. Someone like Joanna Macy says, just at that point, when you feel like you're just going to throw in, you know, you're just going to give up, or George Marshall's book that said, don't even think about it because we can't, it's too big, it's overwhelming. Joanna Macy said, just at that moment, that's when you ought to start to grow your resilience and your response ability. And in that context, responsibility is like bodhicitta, because otherwise it's so big. The problems we face, they're so big that we just deaden that ability to respond. That's the moment when we ought to say, like she does, hope is not a noun. Hope is a verb. Hope is what we do together, not what we have. Okay, so give sort of encouragement. And that's what a bodhisattva does. Got that kind of encouragement. Okay. Wow, okay. Yeah. That's good. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. I like Joanna Macy's. She's written, her book is called, her most recent book is Active Hope. Hope is a verb, it's not a noun. That's so true. You know, I lived through Marching the King and all that. You know, all these folk got killed. You know, America was a weird bunch for a while. It still is. But then in 1963, quick little history lesson. 1963 in the States, King says, time to take civil rights movement to this most segregated city in the South. That was Birmingham. King returned. He had been in Atlanta. He'd been in Montgomery. He said, I'm going to take this movement to Birmingham. Why 63? 1963. No, what he was, the reason we have to do it in 63 is because in 1863, 100 years before, Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. King said, we got the proclamation, but don't see the emancipation. Let's march. We start to march, right? We marched in April and May of 63. The last 4 days, King said, only children, no adults. People said, you're going too far, Martin. This is dangerous, you know, because they set dogs on water hoses. Somebody gets hurt. And King said, make sure the press is there. Just children. John F. Kennedy called his brother, Robert. He said, call those people in Birmingham and tell them to stop this. Tell them to negotiate. John Kennedy did that. Okay. In August 1963, there was the big March on Washington, right? More than 250,000 people. 12 days later, Klan in Birmingham bombed that church during a time when they knew children would be hurt. All intentional. August. November, I think 11th, John Kennedy was assassinated. Then quickly thereafter, there was Malcolm X. Malcolm X, then Martin Luther King, then Robert Kennedy. We thought, no, this is the end of the world. I mean, 4 assassinations in like a span of just a few years. I mean, presidents, candidates for president. I mean, this can't happen. King, the only citizen the US recognized the federal holiday for. This couldn't be happening. And then people said, no, this is the time. Gotta have hope. Gotta hope. It is not just a wish. It is not just a dream. It is when you say, okay, we're going to do this. And you do it with another person, and you get another person. Then the hopelessness starts to fade. Only by doing so. Good old bodhisattvas. Do it anyway. Do it. Diamond Sutra. Flo Kennedy, Black woman. Don't agonize, organize. All right, I think I'm going to end there. So on that sort of aside off into Black history in the States and say, I may have jumped all around here, trying to give a sense of Prajnaparamita and the change it made. These texts actually ushered in a whole new way of thinking about Buddhist Dharma. And they did. And they ushered in Mahayana thought in a big way. And they ushered in Mahayana philosophy, these texts. So they're very, very important. We should read them. We should read them. What they do with the male-female, really important. Certain sutras came after these texts. Vimalakirti Nirdesha Sutra. Good example, maybe I'll tell you that this time when you will. When I say Dharma theory was dangerous, you get a text like the Prajnaparamitas come and then their philosophies, like Arjuna, and their narratives. So just one narrative. Got time? One narrative. Vimalakirti Nirdesha Sutra. It's clearly a Mahayana Sutra. It's not about monks. It's not about nuns. It's about a layman in Vimalakirti. Famed for stainlessness. So pure. But he drinks a lot. He lives in a house with lots of women. And there's a goddess living in the house. And he's the Buddha's good friend. They're contemporary. So in this sutra, the Buddha calls his monks together and he says, my friend Vimalakirti is sick, go see about it. Monks. So there's a group of Theravada monks. I'm going to end soon, Lars. There's a group of Theravada monks. And they're headed by, can you guess?
Sure.
Yes, Shariputra. And there's a group of Mahayana monks, and they're headed by sword-wielding Manjushri. All right. But both sets of monks are squeamish when the Buddha says, go visit Vimalakirti. The Buddha says, what's up with that? So they say, oh, every time we go visit him, he shows us up. The Buddha said, are you kidding? I said, my friend is ill, go see about it. I didn't ask you. He said, go see about it. So trembling, they go to Vimalakirti's house. You know, this layman who's also sort of a tantric practitioner. They're afraid, you know. You never know what you get at Vimalakirti's house. So, okay, we begin with the story, we end with the story. So first, Shariputra goes through heading Theravada monks. And as he enters the doorway, the goddess drops flowers on him. Oh no, these are wrong. These are unbecoming for a monk. Even flowers he thought would hurt him. Oh no, this is not in keeping with the monks. No. And so the people who have depicted this sutra, there's a great pen and ink drawing. The 7th century Chinese person did a scroll of this sutra. So it's time-lapse photo in the scroll, pen and ink. Took him a year. He didn't make a single mistake. Oh, he shows the doorway and Shariputra going, oh, he's just horrified. Flowers. And of course the flowers stick because he's so upset. He shouldn't be on a monk's robe. Oh, right? And then Manjushri gracefully goes through with his monks. They aren't worried in the least. Flowers just fall. He said, nice greeting. Right? Dharmas, all dharmas are empty. Shariputra thinks there's some dharmas that could harm them, right? Got it? So they go in. And this goddess, seeing Shariputra's dismay, says something to him, and he wants to shut that down. Like, I don't talk to women. So he says, goddess, if you're so smart, she didn't claim to be so smart. She just said something. You need to read it. And he says, if you're so smart, goddess, why haven't you changed yourself out of your female form? That's the only thing he can think of is a put down. Right? So she says, well, my dear Sharipuja, I've been in this house for 12 years. I've been looking for my female form. I've yet to find her. And then she goes, zap. And where Shariputra was, there's her form. And then he's really upset. Not me. And she says, just so. Just so. Okay, that's a Bimala Kirti in the Asia Secret where, yeah, where these female characters just start besting the best men wisdom beings. There's some good stories in this group. Yeah. And that's right at the turn of the millennium. These are based on Prajnaparamita text too. That wisdom can change what you think of as concrete, real term, small d. Wisdom can change that. And that wisdom is always in female form. And so it looks like the Prajnaparamita text had a message, especially about transformations of sex and biological identities, all of that, because they really champion that all of such categories are empty. And that's what we should know. And we should behave that way. And we should develop our responsibility and our compassion, right? Because lots and lots and lots of people remain trapped in samsara. And they're trapped by something that they could dispense with. They're trapped by something they themselves. I don't mean like, poverty is real. I mean like we mostly all have the same wish, and that wish is that this be otherwise than it is. On some level, we don't know contentment. Well, I could give a lot of those little things. So I hope you learned something about Prajnaparamita, its importance in the founding, the turning towards the Mahayana, and the goddess. At least you've seen versions of her. And maybe you should think more about that she's the only one of the deities that's not represented. She's the fact. Got to get in touch with that fact. Prajnaparamita. Thank you. Are there any questions you have in the next 3 minutes?
Maybe I have a question.
Yes.
You said how the third element beside the wisdom, beside the inherent existence and emptiness, then you have the person I think you wrote your thesis on,
Asanga.
who brought in compassion.
He's head of the compassion line because Nagarjuna was the wisdom, head of the wisdom line, but he frightened people. So Asanga is made the head of the compassion line because out of compassion, he taught this other way. That other way was taking Nagarjuna's two and making them threefold, giving them a middle place to stand. There's a vastu onto which we attribute something that's total imagination. And there's its ultimate state, which is empty. That's what Nagarjuna said. But he added that this is a vastu, that there's something there as a way for people to think there's something there. It's just not the way I think it is.
Understood. But how does where does the compassion element comes in? Whether it's in this explanation of the basis, or whether is in the Prajnaparamita, where does the compassion? How is something completely?
It's something you said at the very beginning before I started. There's something about it springs spontaneously from that wisdom, from the wisdom that all is empty, including oneself. There's this very intimate feeling of our connection with all beings. And whatever the wish for happiness is, it spontaneously becomes that wish for all beings.
Mhm.
It just spontaneously becomes, because you know that beings are suffering, and you found out a way to lead them out of it, and you just want to. You know, it's like knowing how to swim and seeing a person drowning.
Mhm.
You jump in without thinking, and then you want to teach them how to swim. Okay?
Yeah.
To God. And it's a feeling, it's an experience. It's not something really ever described in words. It's like you get this kind of wisdom. The compassion is right there with it.
Mhm.
It's the other side of the coin. The compassion in action. The wisdom in action, I take it back. The wisdom in action. You just,
Mhm.
you know, you want to help immediately because you know how. All right, so happy to see you all here. I want to put in a plug for the weekend, because the weekend is a practice session where we will try to read as much as we can of the Bodhicharyavatara. Shantidevas, entering into the way of Bodhisattva. Please come back for that if you have some time. Okay. Thank you, everyone online. Thank you, Nico, for your comment there. It was so helpful. Thank you all for being with us tonight. All right. So we do Gewa. I don't think I need that for that one. Okay, do it. I'd like a group photo.
Thank you, everyone
was just
here
a-
and
But
online.
listen.
Yes, and we are really looking forward to see you on Saturday and Sunday again.
Thank you. I'm so glad you found that text.
Yes, yes.
It's the one. All right, we're gonna do group. We are gonna do it. Let's do it. All right, there's people online too. We should take a picture. Is it all right if we take a picture of all of you online? Still thinking about it. I don't know about that. Come on, let's take a picture anyway. Oh, we can get them. I see. Okay.
Oh,
Cool.
oh, that's so cool.
That is cool. All right. Maybe, yeah.
Oh.
Okay.